Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's election forum. Before we begin, we'd kind of like to ask that spectators refrain from displaying any handheld signs or posters during the event. This debate is being live streamed. No, it isn't being live streamed tonight. I didn't think that was my notes. It is being recorded. Okay, thank you for future viewing. We had some hecklers in Orangeville on Tuesday night, and if you want to heckle the moderator, I'd like you to sit up in the front two rows so I can see you. Thanks to the folks at the back. Can we get some more better dialogue? I expect Shell will be more civil crowd. A special thank you to the town of Orangeville, or town of Shelburne. Ooh, that's bad there, I apologize for hosting us at this great event and great venue, and our partner organizations, the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, the Orangeville Food Bank, and the Greater Dufferin Home Builders Association. For more information about the candidates or to watch the recorded debate later, visit our website at dufferinbot.ca. All candidates running in the Dufferin-Caledon riding were invited to participate in tonight's event. Unfortunately, Sylvia Jones, Alexei Cherkasov, and Chris Eggleton are unable to join us tonight. However, we're pleased to welcome the candidates who have joined us, and we appreciate their participation. They will introduce themselves shortly. Here's how our debate will work tonight. Each candidate drew a speaking order just a few moments ago. We're sitting in order 1 to 4. They'll have a 3-minute chance to introduce themselves with their name and party. Following the introductions, there'll be a question period. I have 4 or 5 questions from our partner groups. We're going to take more questions over here. They'll go in the same order. They'll have 1 minute to respond to each question. It doesn't matter who you address your question to, we're going to stick to our order so they all have the same chance. As we approach the 2-hour mark, or once all questions are being exhausted, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing remarks. So with that, it's pretty straightforward. We will begin. I'll start by introducing George Nkitsis from the Ontario NDP Party to give his opening address.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the sponsors of tonight's debate and to thank you for coming out. These meetings are really the heart of democracy, and we've had 2 other ones on Tuesday in Orangeville and Wednesday, yesterday in Caledon East. Questions were amazing, and we appreciate you coming out. A little bit about myself, I'll have all the time talk issues, a little bit about myself and why I'm running. I live in Mona with my wife, Kathy. Spend a lot of time with our kids and with our grandkids. Family time is very important to us, but so is our community. So we always take a very active role in supporting organizations and taking part in activities all over Dufferin and Caledon. And it's this belief in family and in community that's basically driven me in my work life too. I had the privilege of working with 2 very well-respected and widely recognized leaders of the Federal and Democratic Party, Mike Memberlin, Ed Broadbent, and Jack Layton. And I also worked in the steel industry for close to 10 years. And those both gave me an opportunity to travel across the country, to work with communities like ours, to try and find local solutions to basic types of issues that still face us today. And I learned one thing from all of those experiences that was very important. When we work together as a community, we do much better as a community, as a province, as a country, when we support each other, when we look after each other, when we try and pull together and deal with the problems that confront us. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. I think in the last 7 years, we've gone so far away, and then actually the last 10, 15 years, we've gone so far away from that. We've seen a dismantling of things that took us decades to build: our public health care system, our public schools, our colleges, the way we take care of our seniors. We've basically seen housing, the way we're doing it now, and the life in general become so unaffordable. And the thing that's most striking, since we've moved to this beautiful part of the province, we have over and over attempts to dismantle farmland and grain belts for reasons that I don't understand, because we have so many other alternatives. So I think it's time to turn the page on this and to go back to a sense of starting with community to build a new Ontario, better Ontario, which is the second reason I'm running. Marit Stiles, our leader, I've known her for 20 years. She grew up in a farm in Newfoundland. She moved to Ontario when she went to school because she saw Ontario as a land of opportunity. She's never forgotten where she grew up, who she was, and who she works for day in, day out. So tonight, I look forward to telling you a little bit more about myself, about Mark, and the type of Ontario we'd like to see again. Thank you very much. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, George. Next up, we'll hear from our independent candidate, Jeffrey Halsall. Thank you. Howdy. Good evening, Shelburne and fellow residents of Dufferin-Caledon. I'm Jeffrey Halsall, and I'm running to be your next MPP for Dufferin-Caledon. Not to add some fancy title to my name, but because I have already dedicated my life and spent years working here for you. I believe in the local approach, putting our community first and not party politics. I was born and raised here in Dufferin-Caledon, and for pretty well my entire life, I have been committed to making Dufferin-Caledon a better place, whether through my leadership with the Knights of Columbus, supporting local charities, or helping small businesses and families thrive. This is who I am, and if you ask anyone who knows me, they'll tell you the same, and they'll tell you that that's not an exaggeration. I'm a small business owner, and I know firsthand the struggles that local businesses and families face. Higher than high taxes, endless red tape, and empty and broken promises from politicians and political parties that just make it harder to succeed. I refuse to be part of that system. As an independent, I answer to you, not to a party. I'm committed to supporting families and small businesses, cutting taxes, cutting red tape, because I know exactly how much that holds us back. I'm committed to fixing our roads and infrastructure. Enough talk, it's time for real action. I'm committed to making government work for you. Accountability, transparency, and dare I say, efficiency. So, on February 27th, you have a choice. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You have a choice. More of the same broken promises, more party politics, or the local approach. A candidate who's always put this community first and will fight for you every single day. I'm Jeffrey Halsall, a local business owner and a lifelong community advocate, and I'm ready to keep fighting and to keep working for you. Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, we'll hear from Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
So if you haven't already heard, I'm Michael Dane, the Ontario Liberal candidate in the riding of Dufferin, Canada. I'm a father, a farmer, a mayor, a councillor, a geoscientist, a director, a CEO, and a friend. Our family runs an alpaca farm and fiber mill with our 3 adult and 1 young child, and we have a menagerie of livestock from draft horses to donkeys, ducks to peacocks, pigs, goats, sheep, and more. I'm running to fix the things that are broken. I will assess the problems, formulate the solution, and get the work done. You may have already heard of my many issues I'm championing. Doug Ford is pushing a dangerous agenda that threatens the very foundation of our public health care system. By shifting surgeries from hospitals to private clinics, it's not only undermining the quality of patient care, but also jeopardizing jobs and the future of public health care in Ontario. The government's plan to expand the role of private clinics in performing surgeries is a thinly veiled attempt to privatize healthcare under the guise of reducing wait times. The more we drain resources in already underfunded hospitals, leaving them even more strained and unable to provide comprehensive care. The government's decision to pay private clinics more for the same procedures than public hospitals is a slap in the face to healthcare professionals and patients. Patients are not customers, and healthcare should not be treated as a commodity. The push towards privatization will only benefit owners of private clinics who stand to make a profit at the expense of public health. This shift will lead to a 2-tier system where those who can afford it will receive timely care, while the rest are left to languish in overcrowded and under-resourced public hospitals. The government's actions are a betrayal of the principles of universal health care and that Canadians hold dear. Doug Ford called for a snap election with 16 months of runway to work. Does he and his developer friends have more environmentally and culturally destructive spas, highways, tunnels, towers, and subdivisions to build? How many tiny homes could municipalities build and provide infrastructure to with the $4 billion in budget overruns of just one Mississauga hospital? Or could that money have been used to attract staff to work in rural and northern hospitals where there are emergency room closures each evening or completely on weekends? You cannot be ill or injured on weekends because the emergency department is closed. And in 2023 and 2024, a growing number of rural hospitals have been shuttering their labor and delivery units, forcing pregnant women to travel longer distance for care, or force giving birth in an emergency room. Just half of rural hospitals now have maternity units, prompting stressed families to scramble for solutions. How about road safety? The Shelburne bypass, regular road closures on the Highway 10 because of accidents not caused by weather, and transport truck volume and accidents on Highway 50 in Bolton near the borders with Vaughan and Brampton. Nothing has been done. And these are not billion-dollar fixes for the good of the public, not for the spas or real estate speculators in the proposed 413 corridor. To prevent a conservative win and more years of neglect, I'm hoping those of you who haven't voted yet consider Michael Dane as your candidate and avoid vote split again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. I've been a resident of Dufferin-Caledon for 33 years. I've been a volunteer, a community advocate, and an elected official here. People are wondering, why did I end up here as Green Party representative? Well, in the political sphere right now, I find the left has gone too far left, and I find the right has gone too far right. I found myself with the Green Party because we're more of a centrist party. We're concerned about fiscal responsibility, government accountability, government transparency, but always looking at things with an environmental lens. And I met Mike Schreiner about 6 years ago at the conference in Ottawa. I found him to be a pragmatic leader. He gets along with everybody at Queen's Park. And because of our initial meeting, I started looking at Green Party policies. I find here in Dufferin County that the Liberals and NDP really are basically the same party. We even had candidates flip back and forth between the NDP and the Liberals. So, I rest my case on that point. As far as the PCs are concerned, they're neither progressive nor are they conservative. On Tuesday, Doug Ford said he hasn't raised taxes in the leadership debate. However, he's raised our collective debt by $150 billion over the past 7 years. It's unprecedented, it's shameful, and he's hiding in this saying, I didn't raise any taxes, but he's gaslighting us. Imagine he's used your line of credit and rang it up for $150 billion. I ask you, is your road safety better today? Is your healthcare better today? Is our education system better today? Are our housing costs better today? Are our grocery costs better today? And, I'm sorry, but none of that is translated to today. It's all worse than it was 7 years ago. So, in this riding particularly, Doug Ford and Sylvia Jones do not care about Dufferin-Caledon. It's considered a safe riding. It's a fait accompli. And that's a fact. 18 years now of quote-unquote leadership by Sylvia Jones. This is not translated to anything positive happening in our riding. For example, on January 27th, they issued I'm about to run out of time, housing enabling housing grants, water and water treatment grants. Around us, in Erin, in Stayner, and in Dundalk, they receive money, nothing in Dufferin-Caledon. Lots more to talk about tonight. Thank you.
So before we begin the questions, I want to applaud all the candidates for staying on time. That was fantastic. I hope that continues to the question part. It makes my job so much easier. No heckles yet. We're off to such a great start. So while people are lining up, the first question I have comes from one of our partner organizations, the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture. So George Nikitsis from the Ontario NDP is going to get the first crack at answering this one. George, agriculture in is Dufferin's leading economic driver. What would you do to support farmers in Dufferin?
First of all, let's start with making sure that we continue to have our farmland. So the residential threats, the transport threats, where we have so many alternatives, like a toll-free 407 rather than a 415, or building different types of housing like fourplexes or things like we used to do in the past, community-based, co-op-based housing that doesn't threaten farmland. That's very important. The second thing that I would do is there's a huge threat facing us. Donald Trump's going to be in the White House for the next 4 years. And we've got to get our farmers ready, not only to withstand that threat, but how to start looking at developing markets internally, dropping interprovincial borders, but also looking at other markets internationally. Because if we don't strengthen those markets, there's a potential of losing enormous amount of potential in terms of revenue to get from that farm.
Thank you, George. Next up, we'll have Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
Thank you. Farmers feed us, we know that. And we need to focus on local produce. Why are the farmers markets not overfilling? There should not be anything left on those tables at the end of the farmers markets. Let's focus on remembering our farmers. And of course, there's tons of policies we can bring in. The policies are policies. I'm all about the local approach. Let's remember our farmers. Let's remember when you go to the grocery store, don't buy garlic from China, buy Canadian garlic. Buy Canadian, buy local, buy from your farmers. See you at the farmers market.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, we'll hear from Michael Dane of the Ontario Liberal Party.
Yeah, farmers are facing a potential threat of tariffs, and when you're in an industry where you have to plan months in advance, maybe even years in advance, all of a sudden knowing that there might be tariffs coming at you for your products, you have to be a little hesitant to put that investment in the ground if you're not going to get the same market price you're expecting. So I would look at tariff protections and looking at an internal market to try to strengthen sales domestically. Our greenhouse crops, 80% of them are exported to the U.S. We're going to be hit very hard in the greenhouse markets. Not as much of an issue up here in Dufferin-Caledon, but down in the Golden Horseshoe and down toward Leamington, it becomes a bigger issue. But also having more processing locally and not having food shipped across the country or into the U.S. We have to come up with a better food security system for the livestock we have. Beef farmers last year with that strike at Cargill, it was brutal. If you have a Cargill strike and a border tariff, the beef industry's hurt really bad. So we have to come up with more domestic solutions that are local, that will feed the local community.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario. Sandy.
Thank you, Doug. The Ontario Greens want to create an Ontario food belt to permanently protect farmland from being lost to non-agricultural uses, such as urban sprawl, highways, and gravel mining. Only 5% of Ontario is agricultural land. Why are we losing it at the rate of 300 acres per day? It's really, it makes no sense, and we need to lock down our agricultural land. The isolationism that's happening in the United States, we're going to need to protect our resources, including our farmland, and we need to do something like the food belt, lock down this land. We also need to increase funding and remove cap and expand business risk management programs. We need to establish food processing infrastructure fund to support investment by Ontario-based companies in food processing facilities. I know some businesses here, farming businesses want that. We also need to increase provincial investment in ag tech and support agritourism. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. So we're going to start taking questions from the floor. I'm going to do probably 3 at a time, and then go back to a partner question each time, and we didn't get through them all last time, and we need these folks to keep supporting us if we're going to keep doing this. So Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate, will get the first crack at answering this question.
Sorry, buddy. Thank you very much. First off, thank you very much for being here. It takes a lot of chutzpah to be at the front of the stage, to take our questions, to put yourself in the race. So for that, I thank you for taking the time. So I think a round of applause. So my name is Heather Hayes. I have the privilege of being the executive director of the Orangeville Food Bank. We are part sponsors of this because we wanted to get our questions in front of you, because food insecurity is at a crisis point right now, and many food banks will not be able to continue their operations. I'm sure many people have heard about some of the cuts that other food banks in larger urban centers have had to make. With 1 in 16 Ontarians visiting food banks and acknowledging that each of the 7.6 million visits last year was a failure of policy, not a failure of people, will your party champion policies that prioritize people? And what would be the first policy that you would tackle to reduce legislated poverty? Small question.
You went the opposite of taking it easy. As far as policies go, I have to figure all that out. I would love to see less people having to go to the food banks. I'd love to develop policies that will help with what Heather spoke about. I really believe that we need to boost our economy so that people don't have to rely on the food bank. And I absolutely believe in putting in policies that will help with the issues that Heather spoke about. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, we'll hear from Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Thank you very much. Well, I think the one thing that's come up in a few communities, I think Wells pretty advanced in some places, on a regional living wage. The cost of living is different in all communities, the rental cost, the cost of food. Up here in Dufferin-Caledon, it's kind of at the high end. So having a higher living wage or hourly wage is kind of a necessity to have a living wage. Increasing the payouts for Ontario Works. You cannot live on Ontario Works in this area and what they pay you in a month. And then if you're working, they cut you back as soon as you make too much money. So where's your incentive to really work hard? ODSP, Bonnie Crombie's already said she's going to double it. Affordable housing, tiny homes managed by municipal corporations, funded by the province and the feds. I think that's a great way to get started. So I hope that gives you a few thoughts of where I think we should be going with that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Thank you, and Heather. I think, and we talked about it last night at the meeting up in Caledon East, but mental health and addiction is being ignored here. And it feeds into a lot of things like food insecurity and housing insecurity. I think if we invested more in mental health and addiction rehabilitation, we've got people like Doug Ford walking by these housing encampments saying, get a job, put them in jail. A lot of these people that are in these housing encampments have got mental health and addiction problems. It's more of a healthcare crisis than a housing crisis. And we're not investing in healthcare properly. We need to reprioritize. Instead of building $2 billion luxury spas or trying to buy votes for $3 billion or spending $1 billion giving money to your store conglomerates.
Thank you, Sandy. Next up, we'll hear from George Lakitzis from the Ontario NDP Party.
Thank you, Heather. And I toured the food bank on Wednesday. It was very instructive, not only what you do, but the other food banks do in the whole Dufferin-Caledon area. Our leader, Marcel, introduced 4 things that I think would deal with exactly what you want to do. 1, double the ODSP and the Ontario Works. As a beginning, I think we have to go back to relooking at a basic income, and I think we looked at very quickly. Introduce a monthly grocery rebate, which would be up to $120 a month or $1,400 a year for low and middle income, not for the owners of the big grocery stores. 3, go back to building community-based, co-op-based, municipal-based housing. We got to double the stock, and we announced the new Ontario homes, which would build 250,000 over the next 10 years, and bring back tough rent control. Any house built after 2018 in Ontario, does not qualify under renovation, demolition,
Thank you,
or
George.
redevelopment.
Thank you.
So Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party will get the first crack and answering the next question from the floor.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sharon Somerville. I'm a very happy resident of Mono. I'd like to thank the Board of Trade for bringing this together tonight. It's a really important part of our democratic process. And it's disappointing but not surprising that Sylvia isn't here tonight. My question actually was for Sylvia because I think it's important that incumbents be able to defend their government's record. Unfortunately, Sylvia's not going to be able to do that. So if you'll indulge me, I'd still like to ask my question of Sylvia, despite the fact that she's not here with us tonight. So my question is about building the proposed extremely destructive, unnecessary, and extremely expensive Highway 413. One of the main reasons your government says it's building the 413 is to reduce traffic congestion on other highways and primarily the 401. However, in August, the Trillium, which is an online media outlet that is entirely dedicated to Queen's Park coverage, reported that an Ministry of Transportation report stated that the 413 will not reduce traffic on other highways. Recently, in the traffic master plan workshop at the town of Caledon, the same thing was said. The 413 will not reduce congestion on other highways. Why is your government misrepresenting Highway 413 to the people of Ontario? The MOT report seems to have information that would be of interest to the taxpayers of Ontario who are being asked to pay $10 billion for a highway that isn't going to reduce traffic on the 401 or anywhere else. Will your government release the MOT report on the 413?
I think Sylvia would say no, she wouldn't, but I would happily release it. And the 413, I mean, my opinion is it's being built to help developers sell their residential developments in the southern part of Caledon for bigger profits. It's got nothing to do with reducing traffic across the 401 or 407. And it's also there, it's going to destroy some prime farmland, some environmentally sensitive areas, and one of the few areas, I guess, left in Halton and Caledon that still have apple orchards of any magnitude of size. It's going to rip that all apart. So why do we want to do that? It's an illogical thing to even do. You're crossing the Credit River yet again. Get rid of it. We don't need it. We don't want it. It's not making the community any better off. It's making a few rich people richer.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Thank you for the question, Sharon. An organization named Environmental Defense has done a study on this and suggested that encouraging truck transportation on Highway 407 would be a good way to relieve the traffic chaos on 401. They've estimated a cost of $4 billion over 30 years. Well, the cost of building the 413 has been estimated at $10 billion, and we all know whenever the government estimates a public infrastructure project, you can multiply it by 3 and the timeline by 2. So I think that's probably a good idea. That's an immediate solution to relieving the chaos on the 401. The other thing we have to do is Mr. Ford and his government are busy appealing to the City of Toronto. They need to better plan their public infrastructure and private construction projects and stop their own internal traffic chaos. Also, we need to think about metered on-ramps, and we also need to think about congestion fees on some of our highways.
Thank you, Cindy. Next up, we'll hear from George Nikitsis from the Ontario NDP Party.
Not only have we released it, we've been pushing for 2 years. Mark Style and the NDP caucus have gone to the office to release it, and I think we might be on the verge of getting it. But 2 things. One was mentioned by Sandy at 407, which is a natural alternative, why you wouldn't need that highway. But I would take it a step further. What Mark did was stand on the highway the first day of the election, and there were 7 cars in 5 minutes going on 407. So not just trucking, she promised them the day we get elected, we will make the 407 free for truckers. But in the first 100 days, we'll negotiate to bring back, it was our highway, we built it, and it should be ours. And in the first 100 days. And two, public transit. Why don't we look at public transit instead of highways like 413? So we want to go back to a system which doesn't have them just promising.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Next up, we'll hear from Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
I'm all about advocating for what we have now. We need to see some ways of getting rid of congestion on our roads. And things we can do now, I believe, is public transit. You know, I believe right now there's 1 or 2 go buses in the morning and evening that run from Orangeville. I don't even know what comes up here, to be honest. We need to figure out ways to improve our current infrastructure more than anything, because that will help us in our lifetime more than anything. So I would advocate for things we can do now, ways we can make Highway 10 safer, and I would advocate for spreading awareness about safe driving and things like that.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm glad the next person asking a question is someone I know, because I forgot something in my introduction, and we'd ask you when you're asking your questions, keep the preambles really short. We don't want to have to turn the timer around on you, but I will cut you off if you're too long, so get to the question. The first person to answer this next question will be Sandy Brown for the Green Party of Ontario. Your worship.
I'm here as John Creelman, and I'm online. One of the biggest issues in this riding and elsewhere is road safety and the issues that flow from it. For years now, we've advocated for meaningful consequences for speeding and reckless driving. Most traffic fines have not increased in 30+ years, losing all deterrent value. Safety cameras intended to moderate speed and control intersections are ensnared in provincial red tape. Fines that we do have aren't collected efficiently. We have $1 billion plus owing to municipalities in overdue fines, money that would go towards policing if collected. And finally, transport truck sector is completely out of control, from shady driving schools to illegal land use to catastrophic accidents. Queen's Park, and unfortunately the member of parliament who is not here to represent her party, have done nothing despite repeated pleas. What would you do?
Thank you, Mr. Creelman. Well, I've met with some of the groups in Caledon. I've talked to yourself, Mayor Creelman, and to Lisa Post, the Mayor of Orangeville, about traffic safety issues. The provincial government needs to add additional dollars for bylaw enforcement. We need to increase fines because some of these fines, as the Mayor said, just aren't enough to cause any effect. I think we need to also add more municipal control over our local roads and more ability to put in automatic speed enforcement and other traffic calming measures. And this you mentioned it, training. Training's been put off to shady third-party training schools, which aren't, training these people to the right standard. The government needs to step in, remove these shady operators, and we need to reinstall proper training methods. We also need to add inspections from transport on the road, more mechanical inspections.
Thank you, Sandy. Next up, we'll hear from George McKitsis from the Ontario NDP Party.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning. We had this question yesterday at Caledon East. It's a very important question. And I did say there that, I don't know if Carmel is here today from the, there you are, Carmel, from the Road Safety Advocacy Group. two northern NDP MPPs and actually an MPP from Oshawa have been very active working with groups like yours in terms of not only making sure we have adequate inspection stations, but the staffing. We have a lot of them out there, but no staff. And it's strange to see. Why do we build them not there? Also, especially Guy Bourrian has been working very closely on licensing, on legal, and the type of training that needs to get done, especially winter training, which is obviously a very difficult, different situation. So those types, and then the big issue that you had that you educated me on was the illegal farms, the truck farms. We need to really get them off.
Thank you, George. Next up, we'll hear from Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
Thanks, John. I've got 2 sheets here about road stuff. I can post it on my website and on Facebook. And I already touched on that. What I would do is make sure that I meet regularly with the municipal councils. Because the fact that the mayor of Mono came here as a citizen of Mono speaks volumes to the fact that our representatives do not meet with the councils, and I would meet regularly. And that doesn't mean, once or twice or 3 times a year. That I would meet monthly if need be, and figure out what the community needs and take that to Queen's Park.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
And we're seeing a lot more people who get pulled over once, twice, 3 times. They have no insurance. Their driver's license isn't valid anymore. We're not impounding their vehicles. I think that has to be another tool we can use, is impound those vehicles until their insurance and licensing is back up to good standing. Driver schools, look, if there's somebody selling licenses out the back door of a driver's school, they have to be fined. They should go to jail. And if it's repeated, if you're a new immigrant, you're deported. This is not something you stay here and you get 3 strikes and you're out. You're out for good. Bring licensing of truck drivers back to the province and stop privatizing. Provincial funding for highway infrastructure improvements as well. I mean, we're looking here at Highway 109 is downloaded to a county road from Dufferin to Wellington. And if you go the other way, it's a provincial highway. Why are the local municipalities paying for that highway? That should be improvements that are paid for by the province.
Thank you, Michael. I apologize, I'm going to sneak in another partner question. I know you've been standing there for a bit, but I'm up here for 2 hours, so don't say that. From the Greater Dufferin Home Builders, in recent months, we have seen multiple municipalities reduce their development charges, recognizing the substantial cost they have for prospective homeowners, especially first-time homebuyers. Do you believe development charges are still the right tool to pay for growth? And if not, what do you and your party propose? And first up for that one is George Kitsis from the Ontario NDP Party.
Thank you. It's a very important question. I think development charges in different communities serve different things. So infrastructure, you can't build new houses if you don't have infrastructure. So depending on what you need, you have different needs for development charges. So getting rid of them or standardizing, I don't think is the answer. The answer is developers do a great job to build houses that make money for them and that serve a purpose. Our shortage has not been only on housing, it's been on affordable housing. And I think the reality, we gotta face it, we knew it 30 years ago when we used to build housing different from developers, where governments paid municipalities, nonprofits, co-ops to build affordable housing to fill the gaps that developers can't fill. And I think we gotta go back to the future to some extent. Help developers, but just making it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper for developers to do the same thing over and over again is not going to be the answer.
Thank you, George. Next up, Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate. Sure. I scratched it, but I think I still can. Do you believe development charges are still the right tool to pay for growth? And if not, what do you and your party propose?
I'm all for figuring out how we can get affordable housing. we need to figure that out. I don't have a solid answer, I'll be honest, for that question. But we need to figure out, and if you compare the price of homes now to what they were, 30 years ago, 10 years ago even, and compare that to people's income, and compare that to everything else. We need to find a way to get affordable housing. And I truly believe a big part of that is strengthening our economy, getting more money back in your pockets, and yeah.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, we'll hear from Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
And that's a complicated question, and my leader, Bonnie Crombie, she wants to eliminate the hidden tax of development charges. I'm also a mayor of a small municipality that's facing growth. And if you're on sewer and water that's municipal, you've got to pay for that infrastructure. It's a lot different than being on well and septic, where it's the responsibility of the homeowner. So if you're building a community out and you have to put in millions of dollars of infrastructure, who's paying for that? Do you want the taxpayer to pay that on the property taxes? Or do you want that to come off of development charges from the builder? I think the biggest cost that's gone up in this community and all around us is the land speculation, and developers have been driving the value of the land up. A 2-acre piece of land without a house on it, $600,000. How do you build a house for $600,000? Right away, you're at $1.2 million without even getting a young family. That's not sustainable, it's not attainable, it's not affordable. So we got a few things to do. I would try to get rid of the GST with the feds on any new home for a primary residence.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Bonnie Crombie wants to reduce or get rid of development charges. There's only one taxpayer here, folks. If the development charges are removed, your property taxes are going up. So it's not a simple fix. What happened right here in Dufferin-Caledon recently, I mentioned it earlier, January 27th, housing enabling water infrastructure grants were given out by the provincial government. Stayner got 35 million. Mr. Dean's county, Wellington County, his town got $29.5 million. Dundalk got 3.6. Dufferin-Caledon, sweet FA, that's what we got. And the provincial, the Progressive Conservative Party has ignored this riding for 25 years. It's time for you people to stand up and make a change here, because they don't care about you. It's proven.
Thank you, Sandy. I don't usually comment on the questions because we're very, very neutral here, but Michael, I just love when you guys talk about septic tanks. That was great. And if you don't know what I do, look it up. Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate, will have the first crack answer the next question from the floor.
My name is Lynette Landon, and I'm the proud executive director of Family Transition Place. So we are a multi-service agency. We're known as the Women's Shelter for our area, but we also have multiple counseling programs. We do education in the schools. We do a lot of things. So various levels of government and municipalities have declared gender-based violence an epidemic. There's a national action plan that's been declared federally, that's been pushed down to the provinces to help support violence against women organizations. And there was actually a call for proposals that was put out by the provincial government. And many victim serving agencies put proposals in, and we were all waiting to hear the status of those applications, and then the election was called. So no money was flowed to any agencies. So since the last election, the Ontario Association of Integral and Transitional Houses, which is known as OA, has tracked 162 women and children have been killed here in Ontario, and that's only been what's been reported in the media. We've had deaths locally. So my question to you, and it actually is timely that I've followed Mayor Creamlin, because he spoke about that there's money to be spent. There's money in victim surcharges that are not being flowed to victim serving agencies that need funds. So my question to all of you is in what ways will your party invest in shelters, transitional support programming, sexual assault centers, and other community-based services that help survivors of intimate partner violence increase their safety?
If the money's there, let's figure out how to use it to help these people that are in need. Violence against anybody is not good. People that are struggling, it's not good. If the money's there, let's figure out how to do it. And I would figure out how to do it. Vote for me, I'll figure it out, don't worry.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, we'll hear from Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
I firmly believe that addressing gender-based, race-based, and intimate partner violence requires a comprehensive and well-funded approach. I support allocating the necessary funds to ensure the availability of safe shelters, supportive housing, and training programs that assist individuals in transitioning out of abusive situations. By investing in these vital social services, we can provide survivors with the resources and support they need to rebuild their lives and thrive in a safe, nurturing environment. Together, we can create a community where everyone feels secure and empowered.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario. Sorry. Yes, Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Sandy Green from the Brown Party.
I thought I messed up the order.
Okay, thank you for that very important question. So, Family Transition Place is part of one of the Ontario Health Team agencies. I've said it before, this government is not taking care of our healthcare costs properly. The province of Ontario has the smallest amount of investment per capita of all the provinces in Canada in healthcare. When I was mayor, I had a visit from the chair of the LIN, the Local Health Integration Network, was the precursor to the Ontario Health Teams. He told me our area was being funded 50% of the average of the rest of the province, and our MPP was the Minister of Health. This is where the problem is, folks. And this government, instead of investing in healthcare, they're busy promoting alcohol and gambling. It's just not right. This is not the priority. The priority is healthcare costs and not promotion of alcohol and where domestic abuse starts. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Next up, we'll hear from George McKitsis from the Ontario NDP Party.
I think the first step is the step you mentioned, that we have to look at gender-based violence and intimate partner-based violence as an epidemic. We've tried a number of times, most recently at the end of this year in the legislature, actually it was Mark Stout, I think, introduced the motion to have it adopted by the legislature as an epidemic, and guess what? It was turned down. Which meant not only that they might not have believed it, but there was no money for it, which is the second part, I think, of the solution. But I would quickly say at the same time, looking at what your needs are and giving you money, or someone else's community needs and giving you money, is not the answer. The answer is we got to reverse. Again, I think it's going back to the future. We used to have a fair funding of provincial municipal funding to provide exactly those types of services. We have to get back to that, and which allows municipalities to be able to give you the type of funding that you need for the state.
Thank you, George. I see we're getting quite a lineup, which is fantastic. It is imperative that we end at 9. I have a house full of 16-year-old boys watching a hockey game. I need to be home on time, and we're recording, so keep coming up. I'll let you know when we get close to the end. Our next questions from the floor will be directed first to Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
It's Rob Strang from Orangeville. And I actually have a question for Sylvia. And I went to the Orangeville all candidates meeting, she wasn't there. I went to the Caledon one, she wasn't there. So let's just pretend that she's here. Okay, Sylvia, have you ever or would you ever vote against your party if you thought its actions was not in the interest of Dufferin
Well, Sylvia, I'm sure would say no, she would not. But I think already had conflict tonight with some of the policies that my leader has put out there that I don't agree with, or I don't know how the math is gonna help development charges in small municipalities. You've got a bunch of mayors in the room, a few wardens. You gotta be first, infrastructure. If you're gonna take away something, you have to replace it with something else. So unless they show us what they're gonna replace it with, how am I gonna support that? So I'm, you know, if it's something that doesn't make sense, I will say no to it.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we have Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Green Party of Ontario policy is, I do not have to vote the way my leader votes. That's our policy. I work for you. When I'm elected as your MPP, I'll be taking to Queen's Park your concerns, and we'll be voting the way we think that, I suspect, because I like Mike and I think he's a common sense person, probably will vote, 9 out of 10 ways to be it. But if there's a contentious issue, I'll be supporting what our residents here think. That's the way the Green Party operates. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Next up, we'll hear from George Nikitsis from the Ontario NDP Party.
And that's an excellent question because this is the first time I'm running. I'm 73 years old, it's the first time I'm running, but I've been around caucuses for a long, long time. Federally, I worked with Ed Broadbent and with Jack Layton, and I've been very active in provincial caucuses as well. What you raise is a critical issue because, my experience to you, that happens every day actually. You go into caucuses, not everybody has the same idea. And that's the beauty of electing local officials that reflect your views. Do we win all the time? No, right? Is it important that you take on your leader? I know, that's where I might differ, right? I could come back to you if you give me the honor of being your next member of provincial parliament and say, I tried, but I couldn't do it. I'm going to keep on trying. So, yes, there is democracy in the caucuses, but we also live in a parliamentary system where
Thank you, George.
parties can't follow it.
Next up, we'll hear from Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate. Well, this is why I'm here, because I'm sick of party politics. I'm not running as an independent because I couldn't get into a party. I could have picked any small party. I could have ran for a bigger party if I felt like it. I don't want the parties to be determining what is good for Dufferin-Caledon. And that's what it always boils down to, is the parties are deciding what is good for Dufferin-Caledon. And I'm sick of that, and that's why I'm here as an independent, because I will advocate for you. And that's the local approach, advocating for you, for Dufferin-Caledon, for people of Dufferin-Caledon. And no matter what happens in this election, keep advocating for Dufferin-Caledon. Whoever wins this election, keep calling them and telling them the needs of Dufferin-Caledon, and don't stop doing that, because it's all about us doing that. Thank you, Jeffrey. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario will have the first crack at the next question from the floor.
Thank you. I really appreciate all of you being here tonight. Unfortunately, Sylvia's not here, and I would have asked a dozen questions about healthcare. But I'm going to change, and I'm going to ask about education, which is dear to my heart. I've been an occasional teacher in Dufferin County for many years. I've taught in every school in the area, and now I represent 650 occasional teachers for the Upper Grand District School Board and the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario. So, when I taught, things were different. The Ford government has underfunded students by $1,500 each student. My teachers are leaving in droves. The amount of violence that is happening in the schools, they have to deal with this every single day. And they're tired and they're just beaten down. What would your government do to fix the crisis that is education right now?
Thank you for the question. Well, I think it's about reprioritization of spending. I said it earlier. $2 billion supporting a luxury spa on Toronto Lakefront, $3 billion vote buying scheme, $1 billion to pay out the beer store on a contract that was going to end at the end of this year to accelerate beer sales in convenience stores. And when Doug Ford said we're doing it to make it more competitive, he forgot to tell Galen Weston and Circle K, because the prices aren't lower. So, you know, that's $6 billion. That would have fixed your education problem in those three issues. So it's a prioritization of what's important to us. Healthcare, education, road safety and infrastructure. These are the important things we're thinking about. Grocery costs and housing. That's it. Those 5 things right there is what the kitchen table and the water cooler topics are. We need to reprioritize how we spend money here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Next up, we'll hear from George Nikitsis from the Ontario NDP Party.
It is a question of reprioritize, and especially when you look at tunnels that are they're gonna cost us $100 billion under the 401, $100 billion, and will take so much time because they can't then build a east-west link along Eglinton that other than build underneath the 401. But, so the money is there. We really have to start funding public schools again, which are $1,500 per student, cut since 7 years ago. To deal not only with the supporting student needs, but with specific cases, like we had a question on autism yesterday, right? We're only 10,000 of 70,000 autistic kids are getting the service that they need. But I'll also say to colleges, well, you know who developed our college system? The Conservatives, when they used to be progressive. They used to be funded 100% because given opportunity students to go. Now they're funded 30%. We have to get back to the future like in other areas and do what we used to do well.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Sorry, thank you, George. Next up, we have Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
So I graduated high school in 2013. And the problems I'm hearing about now, more or less, are the same problems that I was hearing about throughout my entire education. More or less, nothing has changed. So I'm developing a platform about education. I'll post it in the coming days because this is something that is crucial. Education is absolutely crucial. And there's many aspects of education that are crucial. One part is educating about politics, you know, and educating about being active in your community, as well as all of the classic issues and funding and all of this. So I'm big on education. I want to see change. You know, all my lifetime I haven't seen change in education. I want to see it in the future. Check out my platform.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
So I think I got this straight, but there's 3 funding sources for schools. There's property taxes, there's development charges, and then there's provincial funding. The development charges are only going to capital projects, and there's usually not enough, so that province has to top those up. We also have been, we're looking at reactive measures, not proactive measures to education. So we're trying to catch up always as opposed to planning for the next 5-10 years. And the only place where there's funding, unless you're going to tax the property taxpayers, it's got to come from the province. So we've got to up that game. But I'm not sure if we even know how much we really have to improve. How much money do we have to put in? Is it $500 million a year? Is it more? Is it 200 million? I mean, we're talking, it's going to be a lot of money to catch up to where we should be. And I'm not sure if we even know what we need yet for the next 5-10 years. So I'm supportive of the funding, but what is that number and how are we going to get there?
It began with Mike Harris.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. I can speak louder. We'll take another question from the floor, and it'll be directed first to George Nikitsis from the Ontario NDP. We're back.
I'm John Noster-Huff from Grand Valley. And I have several questions, but I guess I'm going to go with the one for the healthcare, which is provincially run and responsibility. And I would like you to answer personally what your answer would be personally, as well as your party that you're representing. And that is, would you ever consider another pandemic as what we've had, close all the small businesses, leave the big box stores open, and ruin our economy? Would you consider endorsing another pandemic where you would close all the small businesses and leave the big box stores open, by that ruining our economy?
Absolutely not. But I don't know the specific situation. I hope we never have another pandemic like we did, but if we did, were you saying were there unfair policies taken, where small businesses were closed and big box were? Absolutely not. I mean, I don't know why that would be the case and why that should happen.
Well, if you want me to follow up on that.
No. Sorry. Jeffrey Hallsaller, independent candidate. How do you want to respond to unfair business closings during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I lived that. As a small business owner, I lived that. And I was fighting for ways that small businesses could still run their businesses. You know, not doing anything that was against the law, but finding unique ways to do that. So absolutely, like, some of the things that happened were absolutely ridiculous. Having these big box stores open and small businesses couldn't be open, or, you know, one person can't go in a store, they have to wait on the street to get their curbside pickup. Absolutely, that was atrocious what happened. I mean, this boils down to the fact that our government doesn't really care about small businesses. You know, they don't, it's not even a fact about care, it's about they don't realize that the small businesses should not be treated like the big businesses.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dane, from the Ontario Liberal Party.
In the case of COVID, if you can social distance and mask, doesn't matter if you're a small business or a big business, you should have been able to deal with it. Right now, they're facing a measles epidemic, I guess it would be, in Texas, in a small Mennonite community, because they're not vaccinated. In that case, I don't know how you stop the spread of the measles if it's an unvaccinated community, but you have to come up with something that protects the whole community, because herd immunity only goes so far, and measles are extremely contagious. So I think you know, for the COVID case, I think it was overblown that small businesses could not be open. But there are certain situations we may come into where we might have to have a lockdown on a larger scale than we even did at COVID. It's a scary thing that we're seeing. The kids are in pain in Texas. Measles is not a good thing to go through. So you have to be sure. I mean, people don't like getting vaccinated. Some people will never get vaccinated, but you have to protect your neighbors too. And sometimes it's worth getting that shot just for your friends to be safe.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown, Green Party of Ontario.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Shaw. You know, hindsight's always 20/20. It's interesting to look back on this time. I was in office when this happened. Many of you will remember, you know, the reports we were getting from Italy, where doctors were deciding who was going to die and who was going to live because they didn't have enough equipment to deal with this pandemic. It was a scary, scary time. The medical officer of health here was the first person who came up and said, we need to wear masks in a commercial setting. I supported her. I got called a Nazi because of this. So, you know, it's very interesting to have this 2020 discussion right now, but, you know, till the end of time, I'll be supporting science, I'll be supporting the professionals who are in the medical business, and we'll take direction from that. Nobody's sitting on a municipal council that's got the qualifications to make a decision on medical health issues. So I don't know. It's probably going to be decades before the next kind of craziness comes through. The last thing was,
Thank you, Sandy. I know you've been standing a while. Before we take the next question from the floor, Jeffrey Hallsall, our independent candidate, is going to answer another partner question from the Orangeville Food Bank. How will your government ensure that people who rely on food banks have more sustainable, long-term access to resources that support their well-being rather than relying on emergency measures and not-for-profits?
Well, like I said before, I'm all for strengthening the economy, figuring out ways that we can make it so people don't have to rely on the food bank. But of course, bringing in policies. Of course, policies need to be brought in to do that, and I'll figure all that out. But I would rather see people not having to rely on the food bank alongside figuring out the policies.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, we'll hear from Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
Yeah, I think we had a similar question earlier, but I would look at a regional living wage. Minimum wage just doesn't work for different communities. There might be larger places in Ontario where you can afford to live on minimum wage, but not across the province. Again, increase Ontario work so that people who are working, making $200 or $300 an hour, not get cut back. When they hit that threshold, if they take that off their Ontario work. ODSP, Bonnie has said we're going to double it, and I think that's a fair number to go to. And again, tiny houses is, I think, a quicker fix than trying to come up with some other model of affordable housing. On municipal septic, not municipal sewers. Did I get a point for that?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, yeah. and communal well water, and you can set these up in old gravel pits. I mean, what do we have a lot of around here? Old pits and quarries. Why not set up a few tiny home communities in these pits and quarries? So that's my idea.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Thank you. We have to have a housing first mentality. We have to increase support for those on ODSP and Ontario Works. We can't have legislative poverty where people have to choose between rent and groceries. I think that's basically it. Again, it comes back to social services and healthcare and reprioritization of where we're spending our money. But those who are most needy and most vulnerable, our society typically supports these people, and we need to step up. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party will have the first crack at the next question from the floor.
Hi, thanks for being here. My name is Jennifer. I've lived in Bolton for 17 years. First, want to say that Sylvia Jones not being here to answer questions from her constituents is reason enough not to get a single vote from our community. There is a raging mental health crisis. There is months-long waiting lists for services, disability services. There is a raging opioid crisis. I lost my brother 2 years ago to opioids. 1 in every 5 Ontarians doesn't have a family doctor, and that is scheduled. 2.5 million Ontarians have no family doctor, and this is projected to be 4.4 million people by 2026. Please tell me what you personally will do to invest meaningfully in public health.
Good here? There we go. So I see that registered practicing nurses coming into the rural communities, having nursing stations as a first stop versus just emergency rooms, just walk-in clinics. We had these in the 70s and 80s all across rural and northern Ontario. They still have them down in Wilmot. Why can we not bring that back as a first fix, where let the nurses become the first line of defense? And then have some mobile clinics that go around into even smaller communities that don't have the services. When you're talking about the large cities, I mean, the changes now the province has done between the drug servicing stations to the new heart hubs, I don't get it. I don't know what, is that a solution or is that making the problem even worse? So we have to come up, and the other thing is, are we making enough enforcement at the border to keep the drugs from coming in? Because apparently we're doing a good job trying to keep them from going out.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
The Union of Family Physicians in Ontario has asked for the resignation of Sylvia Jones as Minister of Health. That speaks volumes about what's going on here. This government is moving towards private health care. Doug Ford lived in Chicago for several years, building his father's company's business in the United States. You know what they have in Chicago? They've got strong mayor powers and they've got private health care. We don't need that. In fact, I think we should all chip in here and get Doug a first-class ticket on American Airlines back to Chi-Town. That's what I think. Doctors and nurses are moving to private health care. That's going to put additional pressure on our public health care system. It doesn't make any sense. In the United States, health outcomes are worse. Their life expectancy is 3 to 5 years worse than here. And the healthcare costs are double per capita what they are here. It's insane. We need to stop Doug Ford.
Thank you, Sandy. Next up, we have George Lakitsis from the Ontario NDP.
It is a question of funding back, funding doctors, nurses, funding the community health centers that we've got. But it is a question, the main question is privatization. The fact that we decided to take something we built together as a nation, and I'm proud that it was one of our founders, Tommy Douglas, that took on the doctors initially, who are now happy with Medicare, to set it up. But it's being threatened right now. And I think that part of the problem is all the money that's being spent now is being spent towards for-profit diagnostic, and it's granular service. And I was a bit surprised in the leaders debate when Bonnie Crombie was asked, is it a problem that you took $25,000 from a private health clinic that has supported the Conservatives? She said, no, that's fundraising, right? So we have to stop it. And I think our party is determined there will not be any more private funding of healthcare.
Jeffrey Halsall, independent candidate.
So for me, this is similar to the education. In my entire life, I've not really seen any change in our healthcare system. I'm developing a platform for that also. But we need to figure out what we can do to change that, absolutely. I don't think anybody is going to disagree with that, even if they don't do anything. We need people, obviously, that know what they're talking about. I'm not pick on anyone that's not here, but that is, you know, and keep advocating for healthcare. I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced the Orangeville Hospital and how terrible it can be. And the people there work so hard. But we need to advocate more and more. There's only so much we can do when they're not listening, of course, but just keep advocating and they will listen eventually.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario will get the first chance at answering our next question from the floor.
Hi, me again. If we want better policy, we need to elect better politicians. And our current system, first past the post, our electoral system doesn't do that for us, and we know that. So my question for you today is, what is your personal position on electoral reform? And would you champion using a citizens' assembly as a way to move forward on the question of what kind of electoral system would be better served by?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Well, it's unfortunate that Mr. Trudeau waffled on his promise for electoral reform. I think if he had followed through with that, we probably wouldn't be having the question right now because it probably would have filtered down to the provincial level. What I think should happen is on the next provincial ballot, I think it should be a referendum question. And we can't do it, it's you know, the election's a week today, but on the next provincial election, I think we can put it to the people. Let's spend the next 3 or 4 years educating ourselves about the various worldwide ways that people are elected. And I think we do need electoral reform. You know, the fact that Doug Ford got 18 out of 100 people voting for him and has a majority government makes absolutely no sense. And we need electoral reform, 100%.
Thank you, Sandy. George Nikitsis from the Ontario NDP.
I think it's citizen center is something we've always looked at, to look at different options. We have been strongly at the provincial and federal level, has always been very strongly in favor of proportional representation as one option. It might lead to more minority governments. But guess what? Because every vote would count. Whoever you voted for, it would count because you would get a representative there. And it might lead, like if Europe is an example, more minority government. But guess what? Don't you all agree we should be working more closely together? Minority governments closely together. So I think that would be very problem. The key thing in all of this is, I think, that you have to convince people. I know in BC we tried when we had the government in BC, the previous government, not this one, and we lost, and it was a narrow loss, because we, I guess, didn't convince people. So there is a challenge of all of us talking about it. So when a referendum does come, we get an 80% vote in favor instead of a 45% vote.
Thank you, George. Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate.
Thanks. I've been talking about electoral reform and for years. I have a little challenge for you all. Educate somebody about electoral reform and why we need it. Every one of you educate one person, more if possible, one person. And then, hopefully, we can get it on the ballot for the next election. Hopefully, we can get it on the ballot for the federal election. That would be amazing. But we need to educate people on all these issues that are close to our hearts. But speaking specifically about this one, my challenge to you, educate one person on electoral reform and why we need it, and then let's figure out how we can get it on the next ballots. Let's figure out how we can get it on the next federal election ballot, because that's coming up, and then provincial, and let's do it.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
So I saw George was reading my notes here on proportional representation. That would be my goal. I just don't think putting it on a referendum, we're going to get enough people coming in to vote for it. We have a problem getting people to come out and vote for politicians. Are they going to vote for the change in how they vote for their politicians? Maybe the way to do this is put this on the box on your income tax. Do you support proportional representation? I mean, almost everyone sends their income tax in eventually. So why not put it there? And then you've got the majority of the population that's voting age is going to have their say. And we can do it that way too. We don't have to wait for a referendum. Put it on the provincial income tax one year, put it on the federal income tax another year. And if there's enough interest, let's do it. I think proportional representation, though, George, is a good idea.
George Nikitsis from the Ontario NDP will have the first crack at answering the next question.
Hi there, my name is Zach Thompson. A lot of young people today think that voting isn't important and that political issues just don't apply to them, so they don't care about it. What's your message for people who don't plan on going to the polls next week?
Well, my message to them would be, great question. My message to them would be, people are going to be making choices for you for the next 2, 3, 4 years. This is your chance to make a choice. Find out what your choices are. But it's deeper than that, because I think the question you're asking, which is a critical one, why are so many young people dropping out, right, in terms of not being engaged? And frankly, and I know my family teaches, so they might not like me saying this, politics is a dirty word in this country, right? Remember we said, don't talk politics, don't talk religion? Why can't we talk politics? And agree to disagree when we don't agree sometimes, right? So I think we got to start very young, telling people politics is about choices you make. Choices that are made for you and choices that you make. Now for 4 years, you're not going to have any choices. But today you do, and on February 27th you do. Don't lose it. That's your choice. Find out who cares.
Let's start with you, Professor Halsall, our independent candidate.
Thanks. Yeah, that's an amazing question. something, since I've been 18, every election that's come along, I've tried my hardest to get my friends and people around my age to get out and vote and get involved, figure out who they're voting for, educate themselves. So, another challenge. And you've got 1 week to complete this. You all obviously care about politics, that's why you're here. Get one person that you know that doesn't vote. Get them to vote. Get them to get out and vote. One person. You all, at the very least, try. They don't go, they don't go. But if we don't try, then what use are we if we're just gonna sit here and listen to the guys at the table? We need to do our part also. So 2 challenges. Remember, it's recorded so you can check it out later.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Next up, we'll hear from Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
I think you lose your right to complain if you don't vote. If you're gonna complain about the problems we're having, you have to be part of the solution to vote. If your candidate doesn't get in, you can still bitch and go, sorry, Demetrio, I said the word again, 3 for 3. But, you cannot complain if you're not gonna be part of the solution. I think a great education system would be a fortnight skin that talks about politics to youth, and I think you'd probably get a lot of people engaged. We just have to try to reach out to people in a different media. Nobody's reading newspapers, under 30 these days, or few people are. And that was the way most people got their news. And now you don't get it on social media because the federal government's wanted. So you have to find a new way to introduce the themes, the policies, the process. Even they don't teach politics the same way they did 60 years ago, 50 years ago in school. We could start there, but teachers have got enough other things to teach, and I think math and science is usually the priority these days.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Thank you for that question, Zach. Young people have checked out on political discourse. The 35 and under group, they're despondent about their future. This feeling amongst our young has been exacerbated in the last 7 years. We need to restore integrity, transparency, and accountability to government. That's what we need to do. People aren't trusting government, in particular our young people. So I think democracy is in peril right now. What's happening in the United States is frightening. I'm serious. And some of the political rhetoric here seems to be following what's going on in the United States. So we need to encourage our young people to get out and vote. Right now, you have the right to vote. You may not have that sometime soon. So I think if you've got a young person that's checked out, you need to encourage them to get out and vote. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Jeffrey Halsall, our independent candidate, will have the first crack at answering the next question from the floor.
Thanks very much. Darren White, current mayor of Melanchthon Township, former Dufferin County warden, member of Western Warden's Caucus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks very much for putting your names forward. It takes a lot of courage to do so, and a healthy dose of abuse from the public, too, so sorry for that. My question is on a bit of a different level. As a mayor, I can say that with combined in this room about 150 collective years of community service in elected municipal politics, if you look around, we've noticed over the past 30 or so years a collective stealth downloading of programs from the provincial government to the municipalities without accompanying funding to make those things work. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Rural Ontario Municipalities Association, et cetera, are advocating for a new deal between the province and municipalities so that municipalities don't have to beat up on these people once a year through tax dollars. Where does your party stand on that?
So again, I'm all about working with the municipalities and the councils and figuring out what is best for the municipalities, because as you say, that's the people of the municipalities. So I will work with the municipalities to figure out what should be downloaded or not downloaded, and what should be funded, and I'll just simply work with the municipalities and get it figured out.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
So rural municipalities lost the 75% of the farm property tax credit, I think it was 1998, but it might have been a little year or two around there. And the province used to cover up that 75%, and that was reliable and sustainable, and we knew it was coming. So I would restore that. I'm not sure if my party is up to my speed yet, because I'm usually ahead of the crowd, but, and the other, I would look at a reliable and sustainable funding mechanism for infrastructure, and not this grant process, which is a bit of a lottery or Olympic race to who's got the prettiest presentation at a delegation at a conference where the ministers don't really want to even be there. They're just sitting in the room with all their staff. Everyone gets their nice little picture with the minister, and you leave and you go, well, did we get it? Didn't we get it? It's frustrating. So coming up with that 75% from the province for the tax credit, I think it's a start. And then looking at a pool that's a reliable, sustainable amount that you know every year you're going to get this amount that you can budget for infrastructure.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Thank you, Mayor White. You know, I was elected official in Orangeville and council member with you on Dufferin County Council, and I can tell you that there is some better efficiencies that can be generated at the municipal and provincial level. Tuesday night, Bonnie Cromie said she wanted to start another ministry of affordable housing. The leader of the Green Party stood up and said, no, we don't need more bureaucracy. We don't need more red tape. We need just to get at it. We need to be more efficient in government. That's what we need. And, you know, Mayor White, I think you'll agree with me. There's some places that we can probably be more efficient. I think there's probably ministries that could be consolidated within the provincial government. We need to prioritize how we're spending our money. And there's lots of it. This government's added $150 billion to our debt. So there's lots of money out there. We need to reprioritize. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Next up, we'll hear from George Nikitsis from the Ontario NDP.
That's a very serious problem. Why do I say that? The last 3 nights, it must have been 15 times, not only by municipal representatives, but also the agencies that they support. So I hate to keep saying back to the future. We used to do it. We used to have sensible arrangements where we could fund all these services, and I think we have to go back to having those discussions, because I think what's happened over the last number of years is a crazy political battle on who's going to raise your taxes. And that's what's happened. Money's been taken away from you, so the provincial government doesn't raise our taxes, and then you have to raise the taxes, right? So we have the tax base, let alone all the crazy ideas like that tunnel under the 401. We have the money, but we have to go back to start giving it to municipalities where people feel that's where important decisions are made. They know their municipality, they know what services they need, and we need that rebalancing of funding for that.
Thank you, George. Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party will have the first crack at the next question from the floor.
Hi, my name is Carmela. I'm from Bolton, but we also have property across the street where the tattoo parlor now is, and Dufferin Bloomsville Shelburne's dear to our heart, and my daughter lives upstairs. I'm here from the Caledon Community Road Safety Advocacy Group, and we asked a lot of questions. One is a comment. We've been begging Sylvia Jones since October for a meeting. We are a nonprofit group. We had a death in our town of a young lady from a trucker who fell asleep and ran into her. She was a very well-known member of our society, of our community, and our hearts are still breaking. And the MEP, our MP, who does not respond to our messages, is insane. We are losing people in our community. In Bolton, if you haven't seen, we have trucks everywhere, illegal land use. I reached out to each one of these members, except for Jeffrey, I will after this, but we reached out to each member on this panel and they came out to see us. We spent hours discussing. We cannot get a meeting with Sylvia Jones. That's one thing about the safety, road safety issue. We are also seeing, as we drive up here to Shelburne, a lot of illegal land use. So guys, open your eyes, it's coming your way. Take a look what's happening in Bolton. It's gonna be here very soon if nobody does anything to stop this provincially, because nobody is doing anything. I'm also a mom of a 23-year-old who we just found out has autism. There is no assistance for adults in this province with autism. After COVID, there is a huge mental health crisis. This generation of young people, I am scared for my children. They're scared, they panic, they don't want to leave our home. We don't know what to do. There is no assistance. So I asked everybody on the panel, which I know everybody's answer, but I want you guys to respond to everybody here today to let them know how is it going to be for us as constituents to come to you to ask for help, as we don't have that today. The door's locked.
I think I have a pretty open door, and if somebody has emailed me, I think I might be late on 2 messages this week just because I've been on the road a lot. It's part of your job being an elected official is to respond, and if you don't, you get the right person on your team to respond. Don't just leave it hanging. I don't answer every question about snow on the side of the road. I send that to the roads department. I don't like the zone, or I want to widen my driveway. I don't answer that question, but I know who can answer that question. So I get them to answer it. So if I don't directly answer it, I'm at least directing the right person to answer it for you. And I can do the same thing as an MPP for you. I can't guarantee I can get a minister to respond to anyone, but I should be able to get someone in that department to at least get back to you. And that would be my quest to get answers for you.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Yeah, this is incredibly disrespectful of our MPP to not take part in these sessions that we've had the last 3 days. I met with Annette Groves, the mayor of Caledon, last week. She told me that Sylvia Jones won't return her emails or calls. This is the mayor of somebody representing half of this riding. When I was mayor of Orangeville for 4 years, I never got a phone call from Sylvia Jones in 4 years. The one time that we reached out to have a meeting, Ed Brennan, the CAO, and I went to her office. We got through with the pleasantries. 15 minutes into the meeting, an intern leaned his head in the door and said, "Ms. Jones, your next meeting here." We got the bum's rush in 20 minutes out of her office. This is the CAO of the town of Orangeville and the mayor. So, folks, if you continue to support Sylvia Jones, you've got a problem. I'm going to have a constituency office in Bolton, one in Orangeville, and we'll be doing traveling road shows throughout the riding. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. George McKitsis from the Ontario NDP.
Thanks, Carmel. We had this discussion yesterday, and we had a discussion on the phone a couple of times. The challenge you faced when you showed me that video, the number of, not only the number of illegal truck farms, but also what they look like, it was really eye-opening. Actually, anybody want to contact Carmel to get that, I think would be very useful to see it. And we talked about, I think our members of parliament have been very, very active with you. I've talked to a number of them since we talked. The commitment is there all the time to try and get municipalities that are dealing with this, and it is growing. It's going to come here. It's already been in Oshawa, to start looking at common solutions. So it's not each municipality trying on its own to do it. On the autism issue, again, we talked about the healthcare system. We've got to stop funding private sources and return that money to where it belongs. 60,000 kids with autism.
Thank you, George. Next up, Jeffrey Hallsall, independent candidate.
Yeah, so I'll be 100% approachable. Call me, text me, email me, whatever. 100%, I would have regular town halls. you know, I won't be hard to find, 100%. And I live in Caledon Village. I've seen all these issues with the truck yards, and trying to learn more about that and how we can deal with that. So let's talk, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I promised one of the candidates I wouldn't give out the hockey scores. But I'm a pretty happy fellow right now, let me tell you. Nathan McKinnon, 1-0 Canada. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario will have the first crack at the next question from the floor.
Hello, my name is Amanda Corbett. I'm a resident of Bolton, and I'm also a part of the same advocacy group that Carmela is in. I'm going to ask a very difficult question. I struggled whether I should ask it or not, but I feel like I have to. And please know that I'm asking this question with the utmost respect for people who are putting themselves up for public office. It's incredibly difficult what you do every day, and you give up a lot of your own personal life and your family's life to do that, so we really appreciate that. But I want to talk about the elephant that is not in the room. And if we realistically have a chance of getting her out, we do not want to split the vote. And I would really like to know if all of the candidates who are not the elephant who's not in the room would work together and have some of you bow out so that we have a realistic chance of her not getting out. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I think the larger parties, larger than the Green Party, and the NDP and the Liberals would probably have a difficult time with that question. I'm here because I've been a resident of this riding for 33 years. I've been a community advocate for 30 years. I've been an elected official for 4 years. I feel I'm the most qualified here on this panel to handle this job. I know for a fact that I'm going to do a much better job than Sylvia Jones has done in community advocacy. Of course, a wet sponge probably would also be in that category. But yeah, I won't be bowing out. I will be trying, and I'm trying to win people over and vote for me rather than Sylvia Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. George McKitsis from Ontario NDP.
There's a short-term answer and a long-term answer. The long-term answer we talked about. I think we've got to fight for proportional representation because this becomes irrelevant. The short-term answer is, and I'm going to be brutally honest with you, the way you've been with me. There are real differences between these parties, right? One, when the leader of the Liberal Party gets asked about a private healthcare company that's been giving $25,000 to them, and she says, hey, my leader is just jealous that she's not raising enough money to me. That's a huge difference. Someone who says, I'm not taking any money from private healthcare companies or developers that want to go over the green line. We don't have that commitment from another party. So to tell me to bow out, right, and allow someone who doesn't represent where I stand, where you can vote for me, would not be the right thing to do. I'll be very honest. Long-term proportional representation. This time, we're the official opposition. You want someone to take on four that's in the Democratic Party. And
thank you, George. Next up, Jeffrey Hallstaller, independent candidate.
Well, so far we've had two, so you're not bowing out. So here I am. It's really unfortunate that we have to ask that question. You know, I've had people already say to me, you know, aren't you worried about splitting the vote? And I just tell them the same thing. It's unfortunate that we have to do that, and we need electoral reform. And they look at me like, huh? And then I explain to them, you know, if we had a different system, then we wouldn't have to worry about that. And so don't forget my two challenges. advocate for, tell one person about electoral reform, and more importantly, because you have 1 week, get, or at least try your hardest to get one person, at least one person, out to vote that wouldn't have voted next week.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dane, from the Ontario Liberal Party.
I would say, with the advice of the Riding Association for the Liberal Party, I would definitely consider it. I think at the point we're at right now, I'm comfortable that we are a strong second place in the county, and if I ballot it now, what's that going to do? All those votes are going to be gone. So, we actually tried to do this at the beginning of the election. The Riding Association did even before I was appointed. And I think people, there's some egos at the table too that are getting in the way. There's some good people up here with their hearts too. But, is everyone running because they think they're going to go to Queen's Park every day? I am. That's why I'm here. I want to make a change. I want to fix problems. I'm not sure if everyone else has got that same motivation and the same opportunity. Everyone might have the right heart for it, but are they going to be able to do it?
Thank you, Michael. We have our last question is going to come from a partner, and then we'll go to our closing statements. So from the Dufferin Board of Trade, does your party have any plans in any area at all in your platform that focus specifically on Dufferin-Caledon? And the first person to get credit for that was George McKitsis.
For Dufferin-Caledon, absolutely. Let's hear it. Basically, there's 4 key issues in this election. Healthcare. We believe that we have to get rid of private healthcare, and we are the party that says, let's go back to building our public healthcare system that we built together. Housing, we're the only party that's basically saying that if private developers are not building affordable housing, let's go back to the days when municipalities, co-ops, and nonprofits are building. Cost of living, we're saying double ODSP, double Ontario Works, $120 a month grocery rebate because those problems. These are all Dufferin-Caledon issues. And the Greenbelt and the farmland, toll-free 407 rather than a 413. These are all issues that affect Dufferin-Caledon, and we think we have the answer for them, and that's why I'm looking for this.
Thank you, George. Our independent candidate, Jeffrey Halsall.
Yeah, so I mean, the heart and soul of my campaign is advocating for Dufferin-Caledon. And is there one specific policy for Dufferin-Caledon? Perhaps not specifically, but I want to advocate for Dufferin-Caledon at Queen's Park. I want to make sure I'm meeting with the people, and I'm meeting with the officials that are elected to the municipal governments, and make sure that Dufferin-Caledon has a voice at Queen's Park. And that's the heart and soul of my campaign.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
I can't see that there's anything in the party's plans specifically for Dufferin-Caledon, but I have made some specific comments on what I think are priorities. One of them right here is the intersection. We need a bypass right here in Shelburne. I think it's been since 1993 that Shelburne has been requesting this. I mean, how many decades does it take to make a proper answer? And Shelburne's been growing the whole time. The other area that I see is an immediate one, which I've talked about, and you'll find on my social media, is Highway 10. How many times has Highway 10 been closed, not because of snow, but because of accidents? And now we see in Bolton, a truck fire yesterday and another accident. So we're having, right now I would say roads are the one thing that locally we can solve from the provincial level, and we have to act now. Again, not in 10 years. It should have happened 30 years ago.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown, Green Party of Ontario.
Over 50% of Dufferin-Caledon is farmland. In Dufferin County, agriculture is a top economic driver. Green Party of Ontario is the only party that's suggesting that we have a food belt that permanently blocks development on agricultural land so that we we stop urban sprawl, unnecessary highways, and new aggregate pits. So that's gonna stop the 413. And that's really an important part of Dufferin-Caledon, the paving over of thousands of acres of prime agricultural land in southern Caledon for a highway that is not needed. We know that 407 is underutilized. We know that other traffic measures can be taken in Toronto. We talked about them, congestion fees, metered on-ramps, and then solving their chaotic planning issues in Toronto, where they'll put a public infrastructure project beside a private construction project with no thought of chronology or geography.
Thank you, Sandy. So each candidate now will have a maximum of 2 minutes to give closing remarks, and we'll start with our independent candidate, Jeffrey Halsall. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. So tonight you've heard a lot of promises, a lot of things, but I want to leave you with something real. I'm not a politician. I'm not here on behalf of any party. I'm here for you. Dufferin-Caledon is my home, and I've spent my entire life serving this community, not just during an election, but every single day. Dufferin-Caledon needs an MPP who truly understands what's at stake. Someone who knows the struggles of small business owners, because I am one. Someone who understands what families are going through, because I see it and I live it every day. And we need someone who isn't tied to party politics. And that's why I'm running, and that's why I'm running as an independent. Because I answer to you, not the party insiders. Because I believe in the local approach, putting this community first, fighting for real solutions, and making government work for you. So, on February 27th, you have a choice. More of the same, more empty and broken promises, more party politics, or legitimate real change. A candidate who will show up, who will listen and fight for you every single day, just as I always have. And don't forget the 2 challenges I gave you. Educate somebody about electoral reform and get somebody out to vote next week that wouldn't have voted. So, I'm Jeffrey Halsall, and I'm ready to be your local boots on the ground MPP. Let's take the local approach to Queen's Park together. Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, we'll hear from Michael Dane from the Ontario Liberal Party.
So I'm here, I want to be your representative, but I also want to represent all Ontarians. I also want to give a voice to rural and northern Ontario. There's very few politicians from the rural areas. It's all centered in the GTA and Ottawa. We do not have a strong voice. We need a strong voice. Up here, you've heard all of us give comments tonight. I hope you can feel that I'm real and sincere and genuine when I give answers. A few of the people up here speaking have been talking about party politics, not even their own feelings, but what the parties tell them. Others have said, well, Sylvia Jones has done all this and never really answers the question. I've answered all the questions. You might not have liked the answer, but that's okay, because we can respect each other and have differences of opinion. But we have to work and fix the problems and not just complain about everything that's happened. Let's start moving forward, fixing it together. And I want to be the person that fixes it for you, but I need your help to get there too. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Sandy Brown from the Green Party of Ontario.
Thank you. We heard earlier that Merritt Stiles, the leader of the NDP, wants to buy the 407. This is absolute political nonsense. The 407 is worth $35 billion. We know that because in 2019, the Canada Pension Fund Investment Board bought a 10% share for $3 billion in 2019. That valued it at $30 billion. Bonnie Crombie, during the debate, said she wanted to add another ministry onto the Ministry of Affordable Housing, adding more bureaucracy. She wants to remove development charges. Again, I said earlier, we only have one taxpayer here. That's a non-starter. These are just political rhetoric and it's nonsense. So the NDP and the Liberals, they're about big government and they're about taxation, more taxation. That's the difference between the Green Party. We're looking for integrity, transparency. We're looking for accountability. That's what we want. Doug Ford, I've said earlier, he lived in Chicago for several years. Private health care, strong mayor powers. No, thank you. We don't need those. They run up the debt by $150 billion. I've been a local taxpayer champion. 1.1%, 1.01% average increase in 4 years that I was mayor. We've saved tens of millions of dollars on police costing. We've sold that rail line. There's a lot of good reasons there. $32 million into the coffers of the town of Orangeville. And it's going to be a recreational asset in Caledon that's going to pay dividends. So all I can say to you is I'm not going to pretend that the Green Party is going to form the next government. Highly unlikely. But I'm asking you to trust me that I'm going to be a better representative than Sylvia Jones has been. So I'm looking forward to your vote on February 27th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy. The last word from our candidates goes to George McKitsis from the Ontario NDP.
And I'd like to start by thanking the sponsors for another great debate tonight. We've had 3 of them, and I want to thank you for your questions. Questions we got tonight, and we got yesterday, and we got Tuesday. Notice that basically one theme in common. How do we start getting control back to our communities? This is where life happens. And I hope my answers gave you the sense of my life and work experience. That when we work together as a community, when we look out for each other, that's the answer. And I think we could return, that's the sense of everything Mark Stiles has done, and I hope I've said tonight, that if we do that, we can build an Ontario. It might be getting back, back to the future, doing a lot of things that we used to do as a community, right? And I think we can get to a place where everyone has a family doctor, where we don't have to wait hours at Headwaters or at Field Memorial, and definitely where we don't use our credit card to pay for health care, where housing is affordable. Everybody can afford somewhere they call home, where our children, our parents get the services they need, and where we recognize the importance of our farmland, of our grain belt, and we don't have to take unnecessary measures to threaten them all the time. And maybe even where we put food banks in the rearview mirror. But there's one key to that. And that's why I want to be your next member of parliament, at provincial parliament. I think I could represent you very well, and our party can represent you very well. But the key thing is my last message, and we've mentioned over again. Please, friends, neighbors, family, get people out to vote. Because that's the answer to that last very important question. 40% voters, lowest turnout. If we get 80% vote and they don't vote for Sylvia Jones, we will have another member of provincial parliament.
Thank you, George. I was remiss at the beginning. I didn't introduce myself, Michael. I just assume that everyone knows me. So my name is Doug Harkness. I'm the chair of the Dufferin Board of Trade, and I sell something. I'm a proud PE manufacturer. We did not hold an event like this without the support of our sponsors, and I want to thank them again. So the Dufferin Board of Trade for hosting this great event, along with our partners, the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture, the Greater Dufferin Home Builders Association, and the Orangeville Food Bank. Thanks to all the candidates for attending tonight, and thanks to all of you. And I know they will cry that there was a snowstorm Tuesday night, but there was more people here than there was in Orangeville on Tuesday, so way to go. Thank you to our Executive Director, Diana Morris, for pulling this all together. She does immense work behind the scenes. Thanks to Bill McCutcheon from the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture and Jerry Holden for all of their setup and teardown work, as well as providing security. Thanks to the town of Shelburne for the use of this great facility, the Great Tiffin Hall, and Len Bouchardy for all your great sound work tonight. Thanks, folks.